After finally saving enough for a decent car, I parked it proudly in my driveway only to find it egged, keyed, and covered in rotten food the next morning. I knew exactly who did it. When I knocked on my neighbor's door, he answered in his robe, smirking. "If you're too poor to protect it, maybe you shouldn't own it." My insurance didn't cover the damage. I had to take out a loan to fix what his jealousy destroyed. I grew up poor. Not. Had to share a bedroom. Poor. More like. Sometimes no heat in winter. Poor. So when I finally scraped together enough to buy myself something nice, it meant everything to me. I wasn't trying to show off. I just wanted to enjoy one good thing for once. I live in a small town near Amarillo, Texas. It's the kind of place where people still wave when they pass you on the road. But it's also the kind of place where some folks can't stand to see you do better than them. When I pulled into my driveway that night in my new-to-me 2019 black Dodge Charger, I felt a pride I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't brand new, but it was mine. Paid for with overtime, weekend shifts, and 1,000 little sacrifices nobody ever saw. I sat in that car for half an hour after parking it. Just breathing, running my hands over the steering wheel. I kept getting up from the couch every so often just to peek out the window and look at it. The next morning, I walked out with a cup of coffee in my hand, ready to drive to work and show my coworkers. I stopped dead in my tracks halfway down the steps. My car was destroyed. There were eggs dried on the windshield and dripping down the sides. Deep, jagged key marks scratched into the doors, the trunk, the hood. Someone had thrown what smelled like rotten meat and old vegetables across the whole car. Flies already swarmed the mess. It felt like a kick in the gut. My knees almost gave out. I just stood there shaking, coffee spilling down my hand, staring at the wreck of something I'd worked so hard for. And I knew exactly who did it. Calvin. He lived 2 houses down. Early 40s, same as me. Divorced. Worked odd jobs when he felt like it. Always drunk by noon if he wasn't working. We weren't friends, but we had exchanged enough words over the years. Mostly him complaining. About taxes. About people. Thinking they were better than him. About how good men like him got screwed over. I ignored him most of the time. But a couple months back, when he saw me working late in my garage fixing up my old beater, he made a comment. Said, "All that work just to drive a piece of junk? You ain't ever gonna make it, brother. Quit kidding yourself." I didn't respond. Just kept my head down. Maybe that was a mistake. Maybe he took my silence as weakness. That morning, after seeing my car, something inside me snapped. I marched straight to Calvin's house without even thinking. I pounded on his door hard enough that it rattled in the frame. After a few seconds it opened. Calvin stood there in a dirty robe, beer in hand even though it wasn't even 8 a.m. His eyes were bloodshot. His hair stuck up like he just rolled out of bed. When he saw it was me, he smirked. Actually smirked. "If you're too poor to protect it," he said, voice dripping with fake pity, "maybe you shouldn't own it." Then he closed the door in my face. I wanted to kick that damn door down. But I knew that's exactly what he wanted, to drag me down to his level. Get me arrested. Make me the bad guy. Instead, I called the police. They showed up an hour later, a deputy who looked barely out of high school. He listened to my story, looked at the car, shook his head. "No cameras? No witnesses?" I shook my head. "Sorry, sir. It's your word against his. Best we can do is file a report." "Insurance?" "Same story." I had the minimum required coverage. Comprehensive would have covered vandalism, but it was too expensive, and I told myself I'd add it after a few months once I recovered financially. I was stuck. The body shop quoted me $7,300 for the repairs. I had no choice. I took out a personal loan. 10% interest. Another debt hanging around my neck. I didn't eat for a day and a half after that. Couldn't. I lay on my bed staring at the ceiling, feeling like a failure. Like maybe Calvin was right. That no matter how hard I worked, I was just spinning my wheels. But after the numbness wore off, something else set in. Rage. I wasn't going to lay down and take it. If the law wasn't going to help me, I'd help myself. And I was going to destroy Calvin so thoroughly that he'd wish he'd never heard my name. First, I needed evidence. I wasn't going to touch him. I wasn't going to yell at him. I was going to do it smart. I went online and bought a small, cheap security camera disguised as a fake birdhouse. I set it up in my front yard facing the street and his driveway. Took some trial and error to get the angle right, but eventually it covered enough. Every time Calvin came and went, it caught it. I didn't even have to wait long. About 2 weeks after the car vandalism, Calvin came home from the bar in town around 2 a.m. I watched him from my dark living room window. His truck, a rusted-out Ford, swerved onto the curb as he pulled in. He nearly took out his mailbox. It wasn't just once, either. He drove drunk at least 3 or 4 nights a week. I caught it all on camera. Him stumbling into the driver's seat. Him weaving down the road. Him almost rear-ending someone pulling into his driveway. Now, it's one thing to guess someone's a drunk driver. It's another to have proof. I made copies of the footage. Burned them onto USB drives. Sent them anonymously to the sheriff's office and the city police. I even dropped one in the night box at the DMV enforcement office. Then I waited. About a week later, on a Sunday afternoon, Calvin made the mistake of going out for more beer. I was sitting on my porch when I heard the sirens. 2 cop cars pulled up. Calvin's face went white as a sheet. They pulled him out, made him do a field sobriety test right there on the street. He failed. Bad. They cuffed him. Threw him in the back seat. His truck got towed. His license was suspended on the spot pending court. I watched it all happen from my porch, sipping sweet tea. And that was just the beginning. The day Calvin got arrested was just the start. He spent the night in jail. When he got out, he had no truck, no license, no way to get around. I thought maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. It wasn't. Instead of laying low, he got meaner. I started finding garbage tossed onto my lawn in the mornings. Once, somebody dumped an old tire right by my mailbox. Another time, a bunch of fast food wrappers and empty beer cans. I didn't have proof it was Calvin, but it didn't take a genius to figure it out. He wanted to show me he wasn't done. Fine. He wasn't the only one who could play that game. I knew Calvin was behind on his mortgage. I had a buddy who worked at the local bank. Small town, everybody knows everybody. Over a beer one night, I got him talking. Yeah, my buddy said, laughing. That jackass is about 3 months from getting the boot. Place is already flagged for pre-foreclosure. That gave me an idea. I made a few more anonymous reports. Called the city about junk vehicles in his yard. Called the health department about possible rodents living in the piles of trash he kept behind his shed. The city fined him $1,500 for the junk vehicles. He was ordered to clean up his property or face more penalties. The health department? They came in and slapped him with another fine for unsafe conditions. Calvin didn't have the money to pay either. It didn't take long for the notices to start stacking up. And Calvin? He started unraveling. One night, I watched from my darkened window as he staggered out onto his lawn in the middle of the night, drunk off his ass, yelling at nobody. "Come out here, you coward! Come face me like a man!" He screamed and cursed until he was hoarse. Nobody came outside. Nobody helped him. Not even his drinking buddies. He was alone. Just like he deserved. I remembered something Calvin had said once when he was half drunk, bragging. "I get paid under the table. F*** Uncle Sam. They can't touch me." Real stupid thing to say around here. I wrote an anonymous tip to the IRS. Reported him for unreported income, working cash jobs while collecting government benefits. It took months, but the IRS moves slow and steady. By the time summer rolled around, Calvin had a bright, shiny audit notice stapled to his front door. I still remember the morning it happened. I was mowing my lawn. Calvin stumbled outside, saw the paper, and just stood there staring at it like it was a death sentence. And it kind of was. Without a license, without a truck, buried in fines, facing foreclosure, and now under IRS scrutiny, Calvin was sinking fast. You could see it in the way he walked, head down, shoulders slumped. He aged 20 years and 6 months. One night, I heard shouting coming from down the street. At first, I thought Calvin was just drunk again. But then I saw the flashing lights. An ambulance pulled up. EMTs rushed into his house. Turns out, Calvin had gotten into a drunken fight at the local bar. Got his face smashed in pretty bad. Broken nose. Broken ribs. The town didn't have much sympathy for him anymore. Some people even said he started the fight, mouthing off to a stranger about how the world owed him. Now he was broken, facing foreclosure, possibly facing tax fraud charges, and physically wrecked. I watched all of this unfold slowly, steadily, without lifting a finger directly. It was like nature itself was doing the work for me. But I wasn't satisfied yet. Calvin needed to know. He needed to look me in the eye and realize who had engineered his downfall. About 2 weeks after the ambulance incident, I saw the "for sale" sign go up on Calvin's lawn. It wasn't like he was moving by choice. The bank had taken the house. Foreclosure auction was set for the end of the month. He had no truck. No money. No job. No friends left to speak of. Even the bar he used to haunt had banned him after the fight. You'd think that would be enough. You'd think I would feel satisfied seeing him lose everything. But there was still one thing missing. He didn't know it was me. I needed him to know. I needed him to feel it. I waited until the night before he was supposed to move out. His house was half empty already. Furniture out on the lawn, old boxes stacked under a tarp. He sat on his porch alone, a beer can in his hand, a battered old lamp by his feet like he didn't know what to do with it. The sun was going down, and for the first time in months, the air felt cool. I walked down the street slow, casual. I had a beer in my hand too. When I got to his broken fence, I leaned against it and said loud enough for him to hear. "Funny thing about small towns, Calvin." He didn't look up at first. Just took a long sip of his beer. I kept going. Funny how word gets around. Funny how a man can think he's untouchable, and then watch everything he's built turn to dust. Now he looked at me. His eyes were bloodshot, swollen. But worse than that, there was fear in them. "You," he croaked. His voice sounded dry, cracked. I smiled. Raised my chin in a little salute. "Reap what you sow." For a long minute he just sat there. Then, without a word, he threw his beer can into the yard and stumbled inside. He slammed the door so hard the porch light rattled. I stood there for a second, feeling the weight of it all settle. It wasn't joy exactly. It wasn't happiness. It was something quieter. Something deeper. Justice. Not the kind the courts hand out. The kind you earn. The kind you make with your own hands when the world turns its back on you. I thought that was the end of it. I thought after that last confrontation, Calvin would pack up what little he had left and crawl off somewhere to rot. But I should have known better. People like Calvin don't just give up. They lash out. A few nights later, I woke up to a loud bang. At first, I thought maybe it was just thunder. But when I heard the second bang, closer this time, I jumped out of bed. I looked out the window, and my stomach dropped. Flames. Somebody had set the old wooden fence at the back of my property on fire. I grabbed the fire extinguisher from under the sink and ran out barefoot, heart pounding. It took everything I had to get it under control before it spread to the house. By the time the fire department showed up, the fence was a blackened skeleton. No witnesses. No cameras pointed that way. Just like before. But this time, I didn't hesitate. I knew exactly who it was. Calvin had nothing left to lose. And now, either did I. I didn't call the cops. What good had they ever done me? Instead, I spent the next 3 days planning. Carefully. Quietly. I dug into every little thing Calvin had left tying him to this town. The one thing I found? His mother. She lived 2 counties over, about an hour away. He used to visit her maybe once a month, bragging to the guys at the bar about how he helped her even though everybody knew she barely tolerated him. I figured if Calvin had any kind of fallback plan, it was her. So I made another anonymous call. This time to Adult Protective Services. I reported concerns about a suspicious man, described Calvin perfectly, taking advantage of an elderly woman. I said I was worried about possible financial exploitation. Didn't accuse directly. Just raised enough red flags to make them look into it. And they did. Hard. 2 weeks later, Calvin was hauled into court on a restraining order filed by his own mother. Turns out she'd had enough of his drunken visits, his screaming fits, his asking for money she didn't have. He wasn't allowed within 500 feet of her. He had nowhere left to go. And still, he kept fighting. One night, about a week before the foreclosure auction, I caught him sneaking onto my property. I watched from the darkness of my porch as he stumbled along the fence line, carrying something heavy. It was a can of gasoline. He was going to finish what he started. I let him get halfway across the yard. Then I stepped out into the floodlight. Gun on my hip. Phone in my hand. Recording everything. "Smile, Calvin," I said, voice low and cold. "You're on camera." He froze. Dropped the can. Turned and ran like the devil himself was chasing him. But it didn't matter. I had him dead to rights now. Trespassing. Intent to commit arson. All caught on tape. After Calvin ran, I didn't waste time. I called the sheriff's department right away. Told them about the attempted arson. Handed them the video. They took it seriously this time. Within hours, a warrant was out for Calvin's arrest. But he was already gone. Skipped town. Word spread fast. Some said he was hiding out with an old girlfriend in Oklahoma. Some said he took off toward Mexico. Nobody knew for sure. All I knew was that his house was seized a week later. I stood outside, arms crossed, watching as a repo crew hauled away what little junk he left behind. Broken chairs. An old TV. A mattress so stained it should have been burned. His life, laid out in the sun for everyone to see. You'd think that would be the happy ending, right? You'd think I could finally move on. But it didn't feel like victory. Not really. See, while I was busy taking Calvin down, I had been burning myself out too. The loan I took for the charger still hung around my neck like a stone. Interest kept piling up. My savings were drained from repairs, security upgrades, cameras. I started skipping meals again. Working extra shifts. Sleeping 4 hours a night, just trying to keep afloat. Revenge had cost me almost everything but the clothes on my back. And people around town? At first, they were on my side. But in a small town, stories twist. Some folks started whispering that maybe I had pushed it too far. That maybe Calvin wasn't the only bad guy. That maybe I should have just let it go after the DUI. When the fire department came to inspect my burn fence, they found out my backyard setup wasn't up to code either. Hit me with a fine. Small, but it was just another kick when I was already down. I fought fire with fire. And some of that fire scorched me too. The Charger? I barely drove it anymore. Every time I got behind the wheel, I thought about that morning when I found it egged and keyed. It didn't feel like a prize anymore. It felt like a gravestone. A reminder of how hard I had fought. And how much I had lost doing it. Months passed. Calvin never came back. His name faded from town gossip. The house got bought cheap by a young couple starting out. They painted it bright yellow, planted flowers out front. It was like he had never existed at all. But me? I still carried it. The anger. The cost. The scars nobody else could see. I won. If you can call it that. Looking back now, I wonder if I should have walked away after that first night. Let karma do its thing, slow and silent. Maybe I wouldn't be waking up at 2 a.m. some nights, heart racing, reliving every step I took. But then I remember his smirk. His words. If you're too pert to protect it, maybe you shouldn't own it. No. I couldn't let that stand. He wanted to tear me down for daring to have something good. And I made sure he lost everything. Sometimes revenge doesn't taste sweet. Sometimes it's bitter and cold. But sometimes it's the only thing that feels real. And if I had to do it all over again, I would. Without a second of regret.